We are starting to knit a vest. I cast on 100 stitches, knitted 2 purl stitches, 2 knit stitches, and made a 5 centimeter ribbing. Here it is, 5 centimeters of ribbing. Now we continue knitting the pattern. The pattern begins 7 purl stitches, 2 knit stitches, five purl stitches, 2 knit stitches, and we repeat this until the end of the work. To start our work, we begin casting on stitches. We need to cast on 100 stitches. Let's cast them on. I will show you an example of how to do this. I have cast on 35 stitches. We will need to cast on 100 stitches. We turn the work over, remove the extra needle, and start knitting the ribbing. We knit it, slipping the first stitch. We knit 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches, and repeat this pattern until the end of the row. This will be our ribbing. It should be 5 centimeters wide. Let's knit until we reach that length. The first stage of our work is casting on stitches. There should be 100 stitches in total. Then we knit the ribbing in a 2x2 pattern. 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches. The ribbing should be 5 centimeters in height. The working yarn should move smoothly. Do not hold it too tightly, but also don't let it slide too freely on your finger, as this could make your work less elastic than desired. We have finished the work and measured the ribbing with a tape measure. It should be 5 centimeters. Here it is, 5 centimeters. Now we move on to the next stage. First, we cast on the stitches. Second, we knitted the ribbing. The third stage is knitting the entire piece according to the pattern I am providing as a sample. We knit 7 knit stitches. Two purl stitches, 5 knit stitches, and 2 purl stitches, and we repeat this pattern until the end of the row. At the end, we should have 7 knit stitches left, just like at the beginning. We turn the work over and knit according to the pattern. That means we knit the knit stitches as knit stitches, and the purl stitches as purl stitches. We have knitted the piece, and this is the pattern we have on both sides. I have chosen this side as the right side. Now we need to continue knitting until the piece reaches 30 centimeters in length. Now we will begin shaping the armhole, a specially constructed indentation for the sleeve. Our 5 centimeter ribbing, which we knitted, is shown here as an example. We will attach it like this, either by sewing it in or knitting it directly. In this case, I will pick up stitches along the fabric and work on finishing the sleeve. So, to attach this placket properly and prevent it from sticking out, we need to shape this area accordingly. To maintain the pattern, we need to have 7 stitches, 2 stitches, and 5 stitches in this section. We will bind off 14 stitches. Now I will show you how to do this to shape the sleeve opening properly. We begin binding off. We knit the stitches together using purl stitches to maintain a neat pattern, like this. Knitting 2 stitches together as one, we bind off 14 stitches for the armhole. Since we have purl stitches here, we bind off using purl stitches, knitting 2 together to make 1. We have 2 knit stitches, so we bind them off using knit stitches. Then we knit 5 purl stitches and bind them off using purl stitches. We continue binding off until we reach the 2 knit stitches, ensuring that the pattern flows smoothly and looks neat. Now I will show you. We have bound off 14 stitches, and this is how the sleeve opening will be shaped and finished. We will attach it later. Let this space remain here so that it doesn't cause discomfort under the arms. We will need to shape it further anyway. This is how it should look. We will finish shaping it later and continue knitting to the end of the row, following the pattern. I will do this now and then show you how to complete the other side the same way. We need to knit it all the way to the end. We have finished this row and turned the work. Now we need to bind off stitches up to these 2 purl stitches, removing them to shape the armhole properly. Since there are more knit stitches in this section, we bind off using knit stitches. To ensure that the edge stitch is even, we bind off knit stitches with knit stitches and purl stitches with purl stitches. This prevents the fabric from tightening unevenly. We have finished binding off up to the designated point. Now I will turn the work so you can see how it looks. We have shaped the armhole. Here it is. On both sides, we have left these 2 stripes so that we can continue knitting upward. Now we will continue knitting the fabric, moving forward with our work. Look, we have completed the back piece. We cast on 100 stitches, knitted 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches, and created this ribbing. We knitted it to a length of 5 centimeters. Here it is, 5 centimeters. Then our piece should measure 30 centimeters up to the armhole. Here it is, 30 centimeters. Here, we bound off 14 stitches, then 7 stitches, 2 stitches, and finally 3 stitches. This section is about 7 centimeters to ensure that the front panel is finished with a 5 centimeter edge. This is how it should be shaped, leaving space under the arm. Now, to close the center and shape the neckline, we continue knitting. Here is what we have done so far. Here I have reached 43 centimeters, which is exactly the length I needed. The shoulder width should be 50 centimeters. Here it is, 50 centimeters. Here we have 43 centimeters to ensure that the placket fits properly in this section. Now we find the center of this section. Be careful not to include the sleeve areas. Identify the middle of the piece and bind off 10 stitches here to shape the neckline. You have bound off 10 stitches right here up to this point. You need to shape the shoulder by continuing with 24 stitches. We will shape it row by row. We knit 1 row forward, then 1 row back. In the next row, we bind off 2 more stitches. The work should look like this, without one shoulder completed. Now I will finish knitting the second shoulder. To shape the neckline properly, we need to pick up stitches from each stitch while also adding from the adjacent row. This prevents the neckline from being too tight and keeps it nicely shaped and flexible. Here, we leave 2 stitches, and in this section, we gather 3 stitches together into 1. I will now show you how to do this. This is how the neckline finishing should look. I will now knit to the center and show you how to close it. We cast on using the same 2 knit, 2 purl pattern as at the beginning, just like the ribbing. I'm using circular needles for hat knitting. It's more convenient for me because everything isn't as visible on circular needles. When closing your work, you should knit 2 stitches together. For example, 2 knit stitches into 1. This way, the finish will look neat and not be too tight. If you bind off 1 stitch at a time, the edge may flare out like a little skirt. Now we have reached the point where we need to decrease. Look here. This is the section we will make smaller. This stitch stays in the center, while these 3 stitches will be closed together into 1 using a knit stitch since we have knit stitches on both sides. Try to bind off where the knit stitches are to keep the pattern looking neat. Next, we knit 1 stitch. This ensures that the pattern, resembling a little tree, stays centered and uninterrupted. We continue knitting. Here we have 1 knit stitch that remains as is. Then we take these 3 stitches and knit them together into 1. I alternate by slipping each stitch onto the working needle, the right needle, to ensure the direction is to the right. Then we continue knitting as usual, purl stitches and following the circular pattern. We have finished the piece. Here I am showing you a full overview. This is the front panel and this is how the back will look. Join my channel. I'll be sharing many beautiful and interesting knitting projects.